Today, we need to talk about something that just happened in New York City. And the number that landed this week should make every renter in America sit up. So picture this 1900. A young man steps off a boat at Ellis Island carrying nothing but a glazier's toolkit and a few words of English. He's from a tiny village in what is now Israel. He arrives in New York with no money, no family connections, and no plan beyond putting glass into windows for whoever will pay him. By 1901, he started a tiny company in Lower Manhattan, fitting windows into tenement buildings going up across the Lower East Side. His son grows up watching him climb scaffolding before sunrise. By the 1940s, the glass business has become a small construction outfit, putting up brick walk-ups in Brooklyn. And his son, the grandson of that immigrant glazier, does something nobody in the family could have imagined. In 1960, he breaks ground in Queens on a single project so massive it gets its own name, Lefrak City. 20 buildings, 5,000 apartments, an entire neighborhood for working class New Yorkers, built by one family, owned by one family. 66 years later, that family controls one of the largest privately held real estate empires in the United States. 40 million square feet of property, generations of New York renters who lived inside those walls. And then last month, the new mayor of New York City walked up to a microphone and announced a policy that, by week one, sent the entire landlord class of the city into open revolt. His name is Zohran Mamdani. Patriarch is Richard Lefrak, and the number you're about to hear by the end of this video is the one nobody at City Hall wants you to see. Now, you might be thinking, I don't live in New York. This doesn't touch me. Stay with me, because the exact same fight is being teed up in Los Angeles, in Boston, in Minneapolis right now. So hit that subscribe button because this one goes deep. So here is what actually happened. May 2026. Mamdani has been in office a little over 4 months.
I'm thrilled to announce we've secured a pied-à-terre tax, the first in New York.
A total freeze on rent for the roughly 1 million rent stabilized apartments in New York City. Not a slowdown, not a cap, a freeze, 0%, no increases, not this year, not next year. The Rent Guidelines Board, the 9-member panel that votes on annual rent adjustments, met in early May. 5 of its members, the ones the mayor appoints, voted exactly the way he wanted them to. 0% across the board. And Mamdani walked onto a stage in the Bronx the very next morning and told a roaring crowd that the era of working families being taxed out of their own neighborhoods was officially over. It sounded great. It got applause that traveled around the world, and then within 72 hours, the city's landlord registry started receiving filings that nobody at City Hall expected. Before we go further, you need to understand who Richard Lefrak actually is, because this isn't some hedge fund landlord rolling into town to flip buildings. The Lefrak Organization has been a New York company for more than a century. Richard's grandfather Harry founded it as a glass business at the turn of the last century. Richard's father Samuel, Sam Lefrak, built Lefrak City in Queens during the 1960s, a project so large the United States Census tracks it as its own neighborhood. The family stayed when New York was burning in the 70s. They stayed through the crack epidemic. They stayed through 9/11. They stayed through the pandemic. They built when nobody else would touch outer borough construction. And then their own city voted to freeze the rents on the buildings they built. And here is what the political class doesn't want you to hear. The math on a New York City rent-stabilized building does not work at 0%. Property taxes in this city are projected to rise 9% next year alone. Water and sewer fees are up. Insurance premiums on rent-stabilized buildings have nearly doubled in the last 3 years. Heating oil contracts, union maintenance wages, elevator inspections, mandated facade repairs, every single one of those line items goes up every year whether the mayor likes it or not. A frozen rent isn't a frozen number, it is a guaranteed loss. And industry groups, from the Community Housing Improvement Program to the Rent Stabilization Association to the New York Apartment Association, all said the same thing in writing the week of the vote. If rents are frozen while costs explode, owners will pull units off the rental market. To understand what that actually feels like, step into the shoes of a small landlord in the Bronx. You inherited a 6-unit walk-up from your father. He bought it in 1978 for $50,000. Today, on paper, it's worth $3 million. In reality, 4 of your 6 units are rent stabilized at rents your father set back in 1992. Your roof needs $40,000 of work this summer. Your boiler is on its last winter. Your property tax bill just went up another 9%. And the city has now told you that the rent you collect on those 4 apartments is locked exactly where it sits, forever, as far as the current administration is concerned. You have one choice. Keep losing money every month until the building is foreclosed, or take those units off the market the moment a tenant moves out, board them up, and wait for the political wind to change. Now, here is the number nobody at City Hall wants you to see: 40,000 apartments. According to filings reported by the industry trade groups, in the 4 weeks following the rent freeze vote, roughly 40,000 rent stabilized apartments were either withdrawn from active listings, flagged as warehoused, filed for substantial rehab status, or moved into the conversion pipeline. 40,000 units removed from rental supply in 1 month in a city with a vacancy rate that already sits at 1.4%, the lowest it has been since the Korean War. And it gets worse. New York City has been losing rental housing supply every year for 4 years running. New residential construction permits were down 45% last year. Multifamily starts collapsed after the state's 2019 rent stabilization overhaul. Now the freeze accelerates that same exit, only this time on the existing housing stock. The very people the policy was sold to help, working families looking for an affordable apartment, are about to find that there are 40,000 fewer apartments to even apply for. So, what is the man in charge doing about it? He's doubling down. Mamdani held a press conference the same week the withdrawal numbers leaked and called the landlord response, in his own words, an organized hostage taking by the real estate industry. He has proposed 2 follow-up policies: a vacancy tax on warehouse units and a city-administered receivership program that would let New York seize buildings whose owners refuse to rent at the new rates. The state legislature has signaled no appetite for either. The governor's office has gone radio silent. And here is where both sides fail the regular family. The landlords who own 40 buildings can absorb a year of frozen rent. They have the lawyers, the lobbyists, and the cash to wait the policy out. The tenant in a Mott Haven walk-up can't. The young couple looking for their first 1-bedroom in Astoria can't. When the policy designed to protect them collapses the supply, they're the ones standing in line for an apartment that no longer exists. Mamdani froze the rent. The big landlords froze the building. The renter pays for both. And New York is not alone. Los Angeles is debating a permanent rent freeze right now. Boston's new mayor has floated the same proposal. Minneapolis is studying it. Same playbook, same political pitch. And every time it's been tried at scale, Berlin, Stockholm, San Francisco, the data tells the same story. Listings vanish, supply collapses, the waiting list grows. So let's bring it full circle. Start with a young man stepping off a boat in 1900 with a toolkit and no English. He fits windows into tenements built for the working poor of New York. His son builds the walls. His grandson builds 5,000 apartments in Queens for the next generation of working New Yorkers. The family doesn't leave when the city burns. They build, they hold, they hire, they house, and 4 generations later, the city government tells them the rents on the buildings they built are frozen, and within 30 days, 40,000 apartments quietly disappear from the only market that ever needed them. Here's the bottom line. When a city caps the price of housing without addressing the cost of running it, the housing leaves. Not the buildings, the supply. It always does. Every single time. The only question is whether the politicians driving it admit what they have done before the line at the lottery wraps around the block or after. So I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Mamdani's rent freeze is going to bring relief to New York renters? Or is this the start of the next housing crisis? And if you live in the city, have you tried to find an apartment since the vote? Let's talk about it down below. If this video opened your eyes, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. Stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop asking who really pays the bills. I'll see you in the next